next question I have, and I'm trying to ask this to most people. I don't know, it's just a conversation that people don't tend to have on public platforms. They talk about it in private chat. I don't know why it should not be in public platforms. What is your perspective, realization on mental health as a photographer? I think whether it is not knowing where your rent comes from or being put across people's life from a spectator point of view, which is unimaginable, and from your ivory towers of living in Bombay, photographers, press photographers, documentarians, people who are doing that, often go through a lot, and I don't know how much of it is internalized, how much of it is spoken about, but I have heard very little of it. And this is not just for press photographers, this is any photographer. Like you said, not knowing, there's 1 month where you have 5 projects and the other two you don't. You still choose to be a photographer at the end of the day, even in the month that you don't have work. And I'm sure all of this does not play out well in your idea of self. What people choose to do about it is not spoken within photography circles or within professional circles. So, whether it is, if you would like to talk about your mom's treatment and how that affected you, and is this a conversation that you choose to have with other people? Is this, how have you dealt with it in times where photography has not seemed like the best career choice in life? How have you managed your way around it?
Such an important question. Thank you for this. Photography for me has always been about love. It is an act of love. And so over time that you realize that love is a learnable practice. It's a real thing that you can put to practice. You can you can choose. You have to choose every day. And it goes back to that time, that afternoon in August of 2010, when I saw Prabodha's work in Better Photography. What happened that moment is that is the first time ever that I, in a very real way, fell in love. And that is the only way in which I have gotten through some of the darkest of times. I wouldn't have been able to do it if I did not have this real, like, mad, toxic love for photography that I have. It's something that I am deeply, deeply in love with. Every aspect of it, right from the very basic making of the image to everything that it can teach you about the world, about yourself, about along the way the people that I've met solely because I'm a photographer. The number of, like, a huge part, a huge percentage of the people in my life who make me who I am came to me because I'm a photographer. So it is something that I am, like, so deeply grateful for, to be able to do this. But I also know that I survived the times that I did because of this love. I cannot think of myself, it's like, I love to make this reference, because, and I've also made this reference so many times, but I will never tire of it. If you've read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, there's that little girl called Scout who loves to read. And someone asked Scout one day that, do you love to read? And she said, no, I don't love to read. You don't love to breathe. It's like that. It's like breathing. Like, I can't remove myself from a photographer. That's who I am. That's my identity. And that's everything that, I wake up in the morning, and I could be having the shittiest of days, but I'd be like, okay, I'm a photographer. And honestly, you need that kind of drive, like not drive really, but that kind of like emotional attachment with what you're doing if you have to survive in this field. There have been so many instances where like I look back at my life and they're like very real. I'm not saying as like, you know, from some spoiled kid's perspective, or oh, this is too tough and I can't do this. From very real, like life-threatening incidents, you know, where like things that could have changed who I am as a person for the worse that have happened in my journey, like so, like something that's happened within months of me coming to Bombay, you know, where like something so devastating has happened. And like the only reason I could have come out of it is because I've had this. I really feel like I was chosen by this people. You know, like you have that sense for your medium, right? Your medium of expression, etc. You know, like I know a lot of these musicians in this book feel that way, that they were chosen by music. I genuinely feel like I've been chosen by this medium. That there was some divine intervention at play, which came to me and said, "This is who you are." And honestly, like, I'm so glad you're talking about mental health, because I'm not saying this in a manner of glorifying it. I'm not, please, I really hope that that's not the takeaway, that someone says that, oh, this is, we have to get this. And I'm just saying that's how it happened with me. But in every sense of the way, if you don't have this to rescue you, I hope anyone who goes through, I hope no one has to go through the things that we've had to face, but like if they do, I hope they have the support system to help them through that, and if required, pull them out of this, because there's nothing is worth it. You know, I mean, I hope my parents don't make it this far into this interview, and I hope I will not share that. But basically, like, if you know what the semicolon means, essentially semicolon stands for suicide awareness, and I've literally never spoken about this apart from alluding to it. That's what the last text in I'm Not Here says. You know, like, I'll read it out for this moment, just because it feels apt. Not last, second last, as I was reminded. Where, yeah, it talks about abundance. For when my mind plays tricks on me and tells me only about the things I don't have, let the record show that I have known abundance. I know what it feels like to walk under a sky full of trees with birdsong to keep me company. I have known laughter, the kind that makes your stomach hurt and your eyes water. I have known love that makes you want to be a better person. Let the record state that I have lived a full life and yet barely lived at all. And let the record make it amply clear that I am not done yet, not even close. And this was essentially me talking to my suicidal self, saying, you're not done, you know. And I have been very fortunate to have an insane support system. Like that's why I keep saying family. Like all these people, your Sumed, Rohan, Neha, Hashim, Gauri, all these people, they have helped me through the toughest situations of life. Oh my God, you know, like you spoke about my mom's treatment. Like it's such a difficult journey. And the only reason I was able to get through it is because each one of these people showed up. Every single one of them, just as family does. You know, so randomly I will get because they knew about my financial situation, randomly I'll get a credit statement from Sumed or Neha, where like they've sent me some money and I'm like, dude, what's this? And they're like, next chemo session on me. You know, or in pouring rain, 8 o'clock in the morning, Hashim is waiting for me with his car because I had a really shit day and I just needed a friendly face. And he said, Chal, I'll drive you and your mom to chemo. That's what family is. And this is what has I'm nothing without this. It's because of the support system that I'm here. And you need this. This isn't your stable, well-paying, foreseeable growth, predictability. None of that is there in this medium, boss. None of that. You are, at the end of the day, at night, when you're sleeping, when you're in bed, when you're trying to get a good night's rest, it's you and yourself. And it's the people you surround yourself with who let you have that good night's rest. Without people, you are nothing. You are not going to be able to survive this. And I don't want to make it sound this grave. It really is not. There's so much I'm grateful for. I mean, of course, and like all of those things aside, but to also not hold back any punches or make it seem like it's all a bed of roses. Especially like, and I am always in conversation with people like me. There's so many people like me or who come from way more difficult backgrounds, right? Way more difficult backgrounds. People who do not come from generational wealth, who do not come from cities like Bombay, Delhi, do not have the exposure. We have the same dreams. And so I'm always in conversation with them. So whenever I speak, it's always directed at them to say that why shouldn't you, from that small village in Jharkhand, why shouldn't you have the dreams that I have had? Just because I've had an English level education, just because I can speak in this tongue, just because I've lived in Bombay, does that warrant that my dreams are worth it and not yours? Why should it be that way? It's not that way. We all have the right to dream, and for you to dream, there are real ways for you to get to that dream. For you coming into cities like Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, these are brutal places. And we from smaller places, we sacrifice so much to come to these places because these big cities, they hoard the income, they hoard the money, they hoard the opportunities. We sacrifice so much to come here and help these cities with their economies. Know how you make it happen and how you can make it happen for you. Mental health, most definitely this. I do not ever want to paint a picture that this is easy. Especially if you're in your early 20s in a city like Bombay. I also know it right now. Bombay is way more unlivable than it was when I moved here in 2013. Andheri is a fucking nightmare. And as us, we living in the city, we talk about it in an anecdotal fashion. But it has serious impact on your mental health, boss. It really does. Think about it. You're going out on a shoot, you are tight on time, etc. And then and you have seen Google, and Google has said that you're going to take 1 hour. You take 15-minute buffer, you leave well in time. But dude, this road is dug up, and Google does not know that. Now you have to go all the way around. And then your 1 hour journey now takes 1.5 hours. And now you're on a really tight timeline, dude. And you really need this assignment to work. Because again, you've not had the shoot for 3 weeks. And rent date is due. And you really need this 10,000 rupees. And you want to make a good impression so that ye 10,000 aage jaake 20,000 or 25,000 or 50,000 or you want to build that relationship. But the very beginning you're starting because this road is fucking dug up and now you're going to be late and immediately you've made a bad impression. Immediately. Because client ko fark nahi padta. Client is going to be like, I also live in the same city. Murphy to Murphy hai bhai. It seriously affects your mental health, 100%. So, of course, I mean, people also just randomly throw out therapy karo like as if it's the most accessible thing in this world. Bhaji thodi kharidne ja rahe. It takes a while for you to find your right therapist. It takes so much time. It takes so much time to be able to accept the fact that, okay, I am ready to accept help. I am ready for therapy. It's a real thing. No one wants to talk about therapy. We all go say, yeah, it's work. Therapy is work. It's not some magic. Ki tum jaoge and achanak se everything is fine. So yeah, if you can afford therapy, that 1,500, 2,000 rupees for 50 minutes, plus the cost of commute, plus the time that it takes for you to process, you'll come out crying one day and then you'll be like, I want to stay in bed, I don't want to do anything today. Can you afford that? Sure, if you can afford that, 100% please, everyone should. Otherwise, your therapy is your support system. Your chosen family, keep them close. And there's a way to be a good person in a relationship, right? Any relationship. You show up for them, they show up for you. It's not a transactional thing, it's what people in love do. You have to be in love with what you do, you have to be a little bit in love with your friends. You always are. I am, I know I am. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. And it's just, yeah, at the core of it, you really have to be in love. And that's the only way to get through it. And if you really, truly, honestly, deeply in love with what you're doing, with the people in your life, with this world around you, despite everything falling apart, you want to believe in the beauty of this world, boss, your work is done. You just need to have that faith, just power through. It will show you the way.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I think, thank you for the realness, thank you for the vulnerability. I don't think could have asked for anything more. I don't think I have the right to ask you that, but you chose to share it. I'm just grateful about it. Something I think this impacts, and now this is me, my opinion, and straying away from being an objective interviewer. I think this is something that removes the romanticization of photography as this ideal creative expression and brings it back to reality, back to how it affects a human being, because that's what you are at the end of the day, and everything that you do affects you. I think your work is so expressive that it would be remiss of me to not ask you a real emotional question about it. The fact that you chose to divulge all of this information, thank you so much. We hope to treat it with respect. So, after that very insightful, very personal take on life, let's now pivot to the process of image making and how you moved from individual images to the idea of making a book with the first one. And another thing about, like, I would like you to expand on is your idea of bookmaking, and off camera you told me about how you're pivoting a lot towards text. And in fact, the very opening lines of I'm Not Here and James Baldwin, I think it was a very emotional, very real expression of yourself, and you're not only relying on images, because for me that comes through a lot more personal narrative of the creator of the images rather than just putting an image out there and saying take what you want from it, because you're giving them exactly what you thought in your mind. And how does that play out, image versus words? And also please tell us about your experience about the general process of making a book and how that changed from your first book to now your second book.
So my introduction to the medium of a photo book goes way back to 2014 at that festival that I was telling you about, Sensorium, where I assisted Prashant. Part of his curation was an exhibition of handmade photo books. And later on in the festival is also where the first and possibly the only book launch that Saurabh has ever done. And the first time that Life is Elsewhere was shown in a certain way, and my introduction to that work. And I think Life is Elsewhere is the very first photo book that I bought. So very early on in my career, like literally like a year into my career, I was introduced to the form of a photo book. And it just made sense to me, because all this while I'm like, dude, like, where do these images go? Like, who is going to see them? Like, do I have to wait for a gallery to accept my work, and then like people will come and look at my photos on a wall? Some publications which will take up, but sure, publications are commissioning their own stuff. getting your photo story out, and that will also be like a photo story like kitna zyada, so like a very generous magazine will give you 4 double spreads. Like, what are we going to do? It gave me like a very real thing to work towards, that you work towards the making of a photo book. That was 2014, and then by the time I'm Not Here was out, was 2022. Then along the way, it also happened where basically with the moving away from the kind of images I was making for Love in Bombay, moving away from that, also like what people in photographs do is that they very easily convey an image, right? Because it's relatable to us. So we understand human emotion, facial expressions, body language, this, that. It's something that photography has relied very heavily on throughout its entire history. Now, if you remove that from an image, then how are you conveying a certain emotion through an image? Right? So then you have to strip it down and see like, what does a certain image of a certain thing do to the person seeing that image? And that's when you realize that every person actually brings their own life experience as well into viewing an image or a body of work, anything, so if you have a single image, the options are just that much more wider, that it can go in multiple other directions. Now, it's that that Hitchcock exercise, you put 2 images together and how the meaning changes. That comes from film school, and basically to see that, okay, like if I put 2 images together, I'm saying something which is beyond the singularity of these 2 images. And along with that, also came a point of time, eventually came to a point where basically I needed text. Not so much as to explain what's happening in an image, but to be able to use it as an emotional crutch. But basically to say that, okay, if I have an image of a tree, an image of a window, an image of a bed, and sure, you can tie that all together and you can rely on number of photos, etc., like a tight edit, this, that, what you do, what image, all of that aside. But if I also add a layer of text, the way I did in just like 2 lines, just very peripherally talking about a feeling of nostalgia, suddenly those 3 images have a unified meaning with the help of that text. And it also came this also coincided at the point when I was moving away from that Love and Bombay kind of imagery, where basically there's that old notion, right? A picture speaks 1,000 words, and if you introduce words, then you reduce the meaning of blah blah, fuck off. In many a times, that very notion furthers the exploitation of the medium, because the photographer, in the bid to get that one photograph that does not require words, will say everything that's required, will make multiple ethical blunders so as to make that image possible. But in the process, you have stepped on so many lines. Classic example, Afghan girl, Steve McCurry, right? You see the pain in her eyes and this, that, and but you strip that into that, like this person, this white dude with a big ass fucking camera has shoved himself into a tent, made this girl sit without telling this girl what is going to happen with this image. This girl is scared about this person, this entity in her tent right now, but like has got nothing to do, but like has given that one look, which has essentially in many ways made Steve McCurry who he is. Everyone's arguably the most famous portrait, one of the most famous portraits ever taken, and everyone knows Afghan girl. Now, what has that Afghan girl done for the photographer versus what has it done for the girl in the picture? It wasn't until 20 years later that we even found out her name, and that's also only because Nat Geo wanted to do 20-year anniversary of the photo. So that's when the notion of fuck this picture speaks 1,000 words into play, like let's chuck this in the bin. We will use text. So as to say that, okay, you know what, I'm not going to step on any lines. I'm going to take a photograph which is maybe aesthetically, whatever, notion wise, image wise, is a 60% image. But I will let my text do the 40% of the work. And together we have something that is in totality. So these things sort of began happening simultaneously, right up to a point where COVID happened, and then it was also a way. I mean, I was also doing a lot of reading, and so writing became a way for me to let that out. But at the same time, also it was catharsis and all of that. And also I began to do this exercise. So we all were doing things to keep ourselves busy, and so I had this exercise where like I would either write something and find the images to go along with that, or I would go into my hard drives and I would find a bunch of images and be like, okay, let's write something around that. And it did not necessarily always have to tie into the image directly, but it could allude to it, it could sit alongside it. And with that going out on Instagram, I also realized that people began to respond to that in a very real way, be it in comments, be it the DMs. Also throughout 2020 and also 2021, when my mom was undergoing treatment, I used my Instagram as a journal. And I was completely vulnerable about it and being totally okay about it. Because also we have this notion about, oh, you see the number K on someone's following count, then you have the notion, oh, this person has everything sorted. And I did not want to project that. I wanted to project that, a very real image, to say that, hey, listen, okay, sure, I'm a photographer in Bombay, but I'm going through a tough time. And this is my way of journaling, this is my way of sharing. And many, many people just really responded to it. You know, like the printing was one way where basically, like at that point where I had to raise the cost of treatment, and the way people responded to that print sale was, I genuinely think it's because I had been communicating on that medium using both images and text in the months prior. And just the images, the prints sold, the number of orders, etc. was one thing. But the other aspect was the sheer volume of messages that were coming in. Be it emails, be it DMs, just the most, like the people who wrote to me saying, I lost my father to COVID, and at that day, sitting in the hospital, I was on your feed. And momentarily I felt less alone, you know, or so many people wrote to me saying that I was going through something similar and I felt that, and I'm like, thank you for writing that. Or I think also like when the pre-orders of I'm Not Here began shipping, because that happened within like about 6 months time from the print sale, 6-8 months time. And many people who ordered prints ended up pre-ordering the book. And when I would share that, the tracking ID with them, to say that, hey, thank you for ordering books, been shipped. So many people would write back to me saying, thank you, really looking forward to it. We are so proud of you. People I have never met, okay? And like, I remember this, this father wrote to me when he ordered prints saying that my son just joined college and he had to make a presentation on it's bizarre, on his inspirations, and in the list of photographers there was Annie Leibovitz, Bill Cunningham, Bharat Sikka, and you. And I was like, what? You know, and I was like, holy shit, what the fuck just happened? You know, and the same person like bought my book and then wrote to me saying, so proud of you, and like onwards, upwards, and so many of these stories, you know. And I realized it's only because, to really like take the emotion entirely out of it, but it comes down to the fact that I put image and text together. So this thing that we love to say, you know, in the photo world, art, visual literacy, we love talking about it. Oh, we don't have visual blah blah. Of course we don't. हर किसी के पास पैसा थोड़ी है कि जाके यूरोप पे कोई कोर्स करके आ जाए and then we know how to read an image. नहीं होता ना. Not everyone has that thing. But like, how do I communicate with someone who is doing a 9 to 5? How do I? And also like, I began to become really frustrated with, like you said at the beginning of this, only photographers looking at photographers' work. Photo festival पे जाओ, वही 30 लोग का काम देख रहा है, everyone is like, oh wow 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 wow, path breaking work. क्या path break किया तुमने? वही काम तो तुम्हारा अभी उस फेस्टिवल में दिखा रहा था, वही 30 people have come, but ठीक है, those 30 people have a lot of capital, so it really matters to you because मिल गया तुम्हारा grant, तुम्हारा life set. Great. What is the point? ठीक है. And that also really began to like frustrate me because I'm like, dude, I don't aspire to write a novel, but I love reading. I don't think I'm ever going to make a film, but I love looking at films. Music का तो कुछ पता ही नहीं मेरे को, like sensibility है नहीं, but we're all listening to music. So why is that not the case with photography? Why only photographers looking at photographers' work? And like I began to have this time when like my dream of photography began to it's larger, you know, like because it's such a beautiful medium. You break it down, like I said, like it's such an introspective medium. And why should we not be able to take that to someone who's not a photographer? Why are only photographers looking at photographers? And that brings it down to your visual literacy. तुम बड़ा nuance सब कुछ बनाओगे, ठीक है, great, why not? Do it, you're great art. This nuance is this other thing. Nuance is a tool of the powerful. You know, nuance is what the US is hiding behind and saying that Israel is committing genocide. Oh, it's a nuanced topic. Nuance is a tool of the powerful. It's shit. And I wanted to break that fucking nuance and be like, I don't want to make work that's nuanced. Tell it to me directly. मुझे figure out नहीं करना. मुझे जानना है कि बंदे ने क्या बोला. So text helped me with that. To say that, because also like if I remove pictures from the people from my images, and I'm taking a photo of a curtain, window, bed sheet, how do I say that there is thought behind this? कि कुछ सोचा है मैंने. And how do I rely on just that? You can't. That's why I needed text to help me with that. And there have been people who come and said that, oh, I'm not here, would not work without the text. Yeah, I know, that's why the text is there. You know, that's a very serious, I mean, I realized that because I shot that work over 8 years. Yeah? I'm like, dude, how am I connecting this to a regular normal viewer? So the 7 pieces of text becomes the backbone of the work, becomes the binding force of the images. And they also serve as chapter breaks, they also serve as mood breaks. And I realized that that's what makes sense to me, to do image and text together. With Songs of Our People, it's obviously a more direct involvement of text because while it's a visual book, it's a book that's driven by text, it's the profiles, and that's what I keep telling people, please read, because otherwise it's just a book of portraits. And even going forward, I can only see like text becoming more and more a part of, like a more serious part of my work, where like in many ways, like they hold equal importance in my practice than either one versus the other.
That's a great understanding of imagery, especially when you touched about visual literacy. I think Ritesh said the same thing कि तुम्हारे पास पैसा है तो जाओ यूरोप में स्कूल करके आओ. But in fact I would recommend क्योंकि तुम्हारे पास पैसा है. There's a lot of people जिसके पास नहीं है जो नहीं कर सकते. But that is not the norm. The norm is picking up a job, figuring it out on the job, and then years later तुमने थोड़ा दुनिया के बारे में जान लिया है. Like oh ये था visual literacy नाम का चीज. Okay, now we move on to the act of making a book. First, what were your inspirations? You said this book has been made in the process of being made for 8 years now. How does someone come down from looking at hard disks worth of archive and saying there's a book here? And once you have come to that conclusion, how do you go out and make it in the atmosphere where there is publishing houses, but the access to one may not be available to everyone? Or there is self-publishing where you have to sacrifice a day's work, a few months' work, a few years' work, depends on how fast you want the process to be done, and try and figure out everything by yourself, while also keeping in considerations the factors of reach that affect it. For example, the pricing effects. So all of these are very heavy full-time jobs. So how do you go from, oh, I have a right that, oh, there are some pictures from this artist that could be a book, to, hey, book is now out and all of these considerations were there and now let's see how the world takes it in. Both of those things that you can shine light on.
Sure, it can happen where you look at a series of images and be like, okay, this could be a book. But speaking from my own experience, I started the work on I'm Not Here after being introduced to Saurabh's Life is Elsewhere. And I was like, मुझे भी ऐसा कुछ करना है. And then obviously over 8 years you change as a person, work changes, all that aside. But the very beginning, that July 2014 when I began making this work, I didn't know which way it's going. I didn't know what the work is going to end up becoming. All I knew is that this has to become a book. In fact, for the longest time, Love in Bombay was also made with the intention of it eventually becoming a book, and I know that now it will, but it'll now be with the sensibilities I have now, and not the 2015, 2016. This is a tricky one to sort of break down, because who's to tell whether a work is suited to a book or not? The thing is, you can. That's why your peer group becomes important. You have a few people in your life whose feedback you trust, whose critique you trust, and you look at it, you go to them and be like, does this make sense to you, this, that? And you will meet multiple people along the way who will say multiple different things. It's also important for you to be able to understand and filter out the feedback that matters to you. So I think like if I held on to what people told me about this work, then this book would never come out. And this book for the longest time was also my get out of jail kind of card. In Bombay, when I'm doing my rent making work and all those months, you don't have the time to do personal work. You really don't have the time to take out and do your research and thoda sa groundwork karo, logo se milo, this, that. You don't have the time, because even if you're not shooting, you're just spending the time thinking, yaar, where is the next paycheck coming from? So all those years when I could have argued for argument's sake, you could have spent that time just doing some research on a body of work or something, and look at the grants, the kind of works they're giving out, to do something along those lines, etc. All those years I spent using this work as a crutch ki ye kam to chal raha hai. So whenever I go home to Shillong once a year, those 10 days I'm doing personal work, and then Love in Bombay to chal hi raha hai, or incidental work. And I began to it became like almost functioning on autopilot. And then this exercise that I had done in 2019 with my friend and photographer Gareth Phillips, where we just basically sat ourselves down in a room, and for a month and a half we just edited the work, and he basically brought the core out of the work to say that this is not just about your home, this is about the idea of home. And that's suddenly where it began to make sense, because up until that point of time I was documenting things that are happening with home, how Snowy is growing older, what is my dad doing in the middle of the day, or how my mom spends her day, what is Shillong like at this time of the year, what is Shillong like at that time of the year. And then I realized that I don't have the legs for that. This work does not have the legs for that kind of documentation, because there isn't that much happening. And there isn't that kind of imagery that eventually I'm not making those kind of images also. So it's going in a very weird zone. I'm just shooting landscapes at night. I'm doing the night sky, I'm looking at the light. And it was like, I'm very grateful to Gareth for being able to pull out the core of this work and say that this is about a universal idea of home. And that gave me some serious direction. And then we did that exercise also, where we basically handmade 50 copies over the course of a week, and we gave them out for free. And that was also a very soul enriching exercise, where basically we gave this book out via raffle draw, like as if that's where the cover also comes from, because we picked a photo of the cover which had nothing to do with the edit inside. And when you were hand making these books, like we were literally pasting and the thing, and I had the covers lined up on the floor, and I'd taken a photograph of this and I sent it to my mom, and basically these are her flowers. And she said that, yeah, this looks like the gifts I used to make and send to school for you to distribute on your birthday. And I'm like, you know what, perfect, fucking perfect. And that's what I carried forward to when the work took this form, like a more serious, more considered form of printing, etc. But that's when I realized what this work is, and that also played in with the idea of image, text, how you're shooting these images, how you're shooting the text. And I'm glad that exercise happened. I'm glad that I did not listen to all those people who are saying, no, you have to continue doing this. You're onto something, but we don't know what. You're onto something. And I'm like, dude, where does this end? And then after a point of time, you have to get to a place where you can be like, dude, a work can go on forever. Any work. Even a film. तुम रिचर्ड लिंकलेटर को उठा लो, कोई बोलेगा कि बॉयहुड और 2 साल के लिए शूट कर सकते हैं. Because obviously a story can always evolve, but you as the storyteller have to put your foot down and say, dude, this is it. Because this work is it, and also like, I have to do other work. This cannot be the only thing that I do. So I am very glad that this work became my experimentation. In every way, this work has basically, like every car has that buffer zone, no? That accident zone. This work was my accident zone. Basically, it takes the entire hit. Every form of experimentation with your pricing of the book, with your what a photo book can do, everything, this work basically just laid it down for me and said, here, use me. You have been doing this for 8 years. You've been using me for 8. Now let me do this. And that's how I made the first book. Yeah, like again, I got a grant. I got a part production grant from Nazar Foundation, Prashant and Dinesh's organization, and which immediately gave me the direct impetus to work on something concrete, because obviously, I mean, I'm very much about like, okay, someone's money is involved, so we work on a deadline, we do this concretely. And then, of course, when you make the first book, you don't know better. So you follow on the path that you have seen others follow. So you make that book on that premium quality paper, and then you price your book at that premium price point, and you think that, yeah, now to you've made a book, yeah, now to you're set. Abhi Europe to is now knocking at your door. All these, Abhi, now is my time to shine. And then you realize that's not how it works. Key access and network and all of this thing, and gatekeepers, oh my god. At every step of the, kitne gate hai bhai? Gate khatam hi nahi hota hai. Like what gated community is this? Kitne gatekeeper baitha kar? Har area mein there's a gatekeeper. Bana to liya kam, abhi kaun se gate? Let the work go out, let people make. Nahi, we will decide whether this work should even go. Yaar, and then I'm like, dude, like how do I fucking jump this? Because obviously there'll be people who like the work, there'll be people who don't like the work. There are people who I wanted like real critique from, to say that I understand this is my first book, tell me how I would get better. And there'll be people who would on my face say that, great book. And then I would hear that they have said some shit about the book behind my back. And I'm like, why? And it just does not make sense to me. And then last year, when the 1 year anniversary, for lack of a better word, happened with the release of the book, and I'm like, you know what? So many people have written to me saying either saving up to buy your book, or wish I had the money to buy your book, but wish you all the best and all of that. I'm like, dude, there's so many people who have written to me saying that they want the book. Why don't I make it accessible to them? And that's when I decided to do the giveaway and be like, let me put this call out and say, it's an open call. You have 3 weeks. You tell me your idea of home in any way you want. You want to write, you want to photo, through photographs, through film, you want to write something, paint something, whatever you want. Just tell me your idea of home. Who will decide? I will decide. Kitab mera hai, account mera hai, I will handle this. मैं भी gatekeeper. And I said that I thought I would give away 30 books. And then in 3 weeks, I had 179 entries from people all around the country. Someone has written a poem, someone has done a photo story, someone has composed the song, and I was like, this is who I want my work to reach. Why do I care about who can afford the work and who would think it merits to pay that much? Because like, even realistically speaking, right, I understand the premium products, expensive to produce, business, blah blah, that's how commercials work, etc. I get it. But realistically speaking, on a day-to-day level, why would someone who has got nothing to do with the medium photography, why is anyone going to spend 3,000 rupees on a book? 4,000 rupees, 5 to 6,000, 9,000 rupees for a book? Dude, पूरा 2 महीने का खर्चा है बॉम्बे में 9,000 rupees for a book. Sure, I mean, there's gratification in being able to save up for it because you have that sense of ownership. Like I've had people who wrote to me for prints. That's also why, like, I also had that learning because I was like, hey, now I've sold these many prints, so I should do a limited edition print run. And I did a limited edition print run. I sold my prints for 15,000 rupees and edition of 5, this, that. And obviously no one responded to it. And I'm like, dude, that is not my crowd. I mean, I don't have galleries and all of that kind of audience following me. The people who are looking at my work are young photographers, students, people from around the country, this, that. And like the number of students who have bought my prints, that just means so much to me. Like, look at what's happening around the world. It's students where the hope is. And you know, like, I go back to that time of August 2010. Like, if that better photography issue was for 3,000 rupees and not 100 rupees, I would not be a photographer. And my goal is to always be able to achieve that moment. If I can achieve that moment for just one more person, I'd be like, you know what, I've done something in my life. You know, because it's something that Baldwin says in this conversation with Nikki Giovanni. It's on YouTube. I recommend everyone to watch it. It's called Soul. Beautiful. You know, treat it like an assignment, 2 hours, watch it. And in that conversation, Baldwin tells Nikki Giovanni that you can't stop living your life, but you have to make sure that it becomes easier for the next generation. That's it. You can't stop living your life, but you know how shit this life is. You know how we are afflicted by the human condition, and you just have to do your best in making sure that you make life easier for someone else. And if that means making your work accessible, then so be it. If it's through medium of communication, then so be it. And that's when, like, 179 people participated in that giveaway, and I gave away 50 books because I did not have that many copies remaining. I'm like, okay, I can do 50. And the book went to some place in Nagaland, somewhere in Vizag, some village by the sea in Kerala, some place in Kanpur, places where you just don't hear of photo books going. But suddenly my book exists in these little homes, in these little places that we do not associate a photo book with. And I realized that yes, this is the first step in being able to take photography to people who are not directly photographers or inclined in photography, and just someone who has followed your work and being like, okay, I connected with this and I want this. That completely changed my entire perspective about self-publishing and photo books and art objects and all of those things. And I realized that I took a good long look at myself and said that what is it that you want? Because hey, we're also human. We also, of course, we all want validation, but a lot of times we also seek validation from certain sectors. Because when you were younger, you were taught to aspire to a certain thing, right? Like in your 20s, you're taught to aspire to, like, oh, Magnum, what a beautiful agency. Magnum has as many faults as any other agency run by white people. You know, and New York Times, you have to get your work in New York Times. You know, these are aspirations. Now Israel-Palestine has happened and all Western media is fully nanga. And sab Everyone's real face has come out. So, but it takes a while, but you also aspire to the things you aspire to, right? Because that's how the world has worked this far. These are the people who have stuck themselves in front of the line and said that you have to go through us. So I had to take a good long look at my work and myself and ask myself, what is it that I'm aspiring to? And the more I ask something that I still ask myself, because I'm no Buddha. I'm not someone who's attained nirvana and said, no, I do not want this. And of course not. We're all human. Of course, Kalko, if Magnum knocks at my door, I'm not going to, I don't know sometimes I put myself to sleep thinking that, oh, Magnum will approach me and I'll be like, fuck you, I don't want this. But get real, dude. You're not going to do that. So, maybe somewhere you still do aspire to it. You still aspire to win your Parry Photo Award and you want to get shortlisted on Photo Book of the Year and all that. But the core of the matter is that I want my existential situation sorted. So basically, I want to be financially secure. Step one. Step two is I want my work to make people feel less alone. Because that is what the best of work has done to me. The best of work has been accessible to me. Be it Baldwin's work, be it Radiohead's music, be it Xavier Dolan's films. I don't think I've ever broken a bank to receive any of these works. And that is not me. I'm not that pig-headed to put myself in that category, but just to say that work that has mattered to me has been accessible to me. The things I relied on, the things I leaned on those dark nights where I did not know if I could get through that night. I had Radiohead's music on Spotify. I remember June 9th when, with June 9th, 2021, when mom's treatment is going on and like so much of chemo is left and financial situation is a mess, and on top of that, Bombay pulls one of those Bombay days where there's more rainfall than the entire month and my ground floor flat gets flooded, and now I have to move to a friend's place, go through waterlogged streets at a time when my mom is susceptible to infection. Somehow we get to my friend's place, I had that spare key, my friends were not at home but I had a spare key, and at that immediate moment I was like, okay, immediately we are in a dry place, we're in a safe place, my mom has immediate care, we have food, there's medicine, we are fine. And at that night, I remember lying on the couch in my friend's room and I was playing No Surprises by Radiohead on loop. No alarms and no surprises, no alarms and no surprises, And I could just feel these tears just like run down the side of my face, being like, this cannot be it, man. There has to, something has to give. Something has to give, but like Tom York's voice, that weird video of him just drowning in that, it's just constantly playing. I can't think of that night without No Surprises. Imagine if I would have to pay at that point in time 500 rupees to access this song. Man, that would have hurt so much. And ideally, I want to get to a place where my work can do that for someone. And how do I do that if my book is priced at 3,000 rupees? It just can't. If you're pricing a book at 3,000 rupees, only a very few specific people can buy that book, dude. Spending 3,000 rupees on a book, are you crazy? Get real. What is this world? What is this country that we're in? Sure, that's your medium, this, that, but that is not my dream with photography. That is not my dream with bookmaking. But here we are in this medium, so how do we go about it? And that's when I realized, bringing me back to the first point, financial security. I want to get to a place where, sure, Songs of Our People is made with the help of a grant, who I'm very grateful for, by this agency called Meghalaya Age Limited, who gave me an entire production grant and I had no commitment to them. They did not want a percentage from my sales. They did not want X number of copies. They just said, "Here, do the work. We trust you." And with not having a burden to recover the cost of printing, it allows me to like really bring down the cost of a book. And so suddenly, like, Songs of Our People is for 600 rupees, 590. You know. Ideally, I'd want to make it even lower, but there were costs which I did not foresee, which I did not add to my budget during the pitch, and so that's why the book even has a cost. You know, cost of shipping, logistical costs, or at the Shillong book launch, the number of artists who performed, and I wanted to give them even a small amount to say that thank you for your time, thank you for agreeing to do this, and it's just a token of appreciation, but at least it's there. So the cost of the book goes into all of that. For the Bombay launch that's coming up, I'm trying to get an artist down. Cost of the book goes towards the flight ticket, and again a small honorarium towards the artist. But I do know for certain, okay, like I already have at least 3 books in the pipeline, and this is my medium of communication. I just know it. It just makes so much sense to me. But I am not going to make a book that is going to be, ideally I want to keep it at this price range, but if it can't, then it's not going to be more than 700, 800. I want my books to be accessible. I want the photo book to be just a book. I don't want it to be an art object. Think about the best books that you've read, you know, like you've forgotten it in your bag, it's gotten wet in the rain. Someone, you've lent it to a friend, it's come back with dog ears, you know, you've fallen asleep with it on your chest, you've just forgotten it on the side of your table, it's gathering dust, but hey, you suddenly remember it and you want to read that passage and you pick it out and you're like, oh my god, this is so beautiful. You needed it on that day. I want that to happen with my books. I want my photo books to be just a book, for people to read it, to love it like a book. You know, one of my favorite moments was when I did my first book launch in Shillong with Janice, who, again, one of those people who came into my life and completely changed my life, you know, and like, Janice is the kind of person who met me at a time where I really needed to meet someone like Janice. And like, it's almost like she introduced me to myself and said, hey, this is who you are. And I remember the day of the book launch, and we're sitting at this cafe, and she takes out her book, and you know this end paper, no, this green paper. So she had forgotten it in her bag, and of course it's Shillong, so it rained, and her book got wet, and this entire green thing bled into the white pages and all of this, and my first thought was, you know, my God, art book. And Janice looked at me like, yeah, Shillong, you know, it happens. Number of books I've got read. I'm like, you know, fuck yes. Fuck yes. If your book is ruined because the color of your end paper has bled into the paper, dude, it was just not a good book to begin with, you know. And yeah, so I guess that's where it stands. Number one, when it comes to publishing, financial security, like a serious financial security, to be able to say that, okay, cost of production is one, cost of dissemination, etc. is one, but also the time that goes into making it is a very serious thing, because the time that you're spent at the printers, the time that you're spending in getting a book out takes serious energy. It's also time that you can't do an assignment. It's also time that you have to say no to a bunch of assignments. Do you have the time? Do you have the buffer zone to be able to take that hit? You know, do you have those 3-4 months rent stacked in your bank account to say that, you know what, I can do this? Only then be like, okay, let's make that book. You know, and so that's the goal, that's the hope, to be able to make more books and to make them at a price which is accessible, not just to photographers but to everyone.
Thank you so much for that. I think it's very, very, very insightful to everything that you said. And these were very real factors of making a book, whether it's association of images with words or whether it is actually seeking financial security, because no body of art should deplete you. and I've seen a lot of people
Perfect.
in the pursuit of it have depleted their idea of what their art is or who they are. And I think it's not a sacrifice worth making. So some very, very important points. Thank you for that. Now we're going to wrap it up, but before this, I always ask a very random question, and it's more for my knowledge than the viewer's knowledge. I find artists take inspiration from the strangest places. When you said No Surprises by Radiohead, it's played quite a bit, few times in my life in very strange situations. So I know that song very, very well. But I'm not calling this a creative block. I mean, people deal with that by just in their own ways. But what inspires you outside of photography?
I feel like right now, I mean, I only look at inspiration outside of photography. I'm not at a place where I can look at anyone's work. You know, like every now and then I'll scroll and I'll look at some photographer's work, etc. I like it, but like I am not someone who can. I have let go of dreams of acquiring photo books and all of that. Sometimes it really, I think I don't even remember the names of the photographers, but this really beautiful black and white body of work called The Third Eye, and after a long time I felt like, okay, I want that book. So for a long time, like I've stopped looking at inspiration in photography also, just to get distance from the medium, because a lot of times, if you're looking at people making in your medium, your ideas tend to get muddled and be like, oh, should I do this, should I do that? Just to keep away from that, not, and also like this slowly building rage towards photo work. Things. I'm just like, let's keep it at a safe distance. Inspiration of late has been, and always has been, literature, music, films, and people. Always.
Okay, give me 3 in each.
So, so even Songs of Our People starts with a Baldwin quote, and that's what I joke with my friends, that this is my Banya equivalent of, like, you know, they write Om. All my books will begin with a Baldwin quote. For all the 3 books that I just told you about, I have a Baldwin quote ready. So obviously James Baldwin plays a massive role in my life. I think of him as a friend, I think of him as a mentor. The fact that he was introduced to me by someone who is now a partner of mine just makes that, you know, I'm also that kind of person that when I'm in love, I tend to internalize that. So like, just the way I internalize this medium, I internalize Baldwin because I am in love with this woman, and it's played a huge role in my life, as well as someone like an Angela Davis or a Sata Shakur, who basically is someone who was introduced to me by this other partner of mine. And so I would say Baldwin's work 100% always is an inspiration. Janice's work, always. Oh my god, her last book, Everything the Light Touches, it basically like reached inside of me and like did something to my interiors and said that, you know, you need to look at the world this way. And that's what I keep telling Janice, that I hope that like every body of work that I produce is a response to that work of yours. It's so beautiful. So all of Baldwin's work, all of Janice's work, but especially her last book, Everything the Light Touches. And wow, to pick one more. Yeah, of recent times, I read Shadow King by Mazza Mengiste. And if Sontag has said that the camera is a gun, Mengiste shows how. And for photographers, it's a crucial book to read. It's set against the Italian invasion of Ethiopia. And once you read the book, you'll understand. Like, part of the Italian camp is a photographer, and how that photographer furthers the violence. Brilliant book. So yeah, I guess that's 3. Music, how do you do 3? Radiohead, obviously. There's a lot of Ali Sethi that resorted to. I mean, I would say generally, a friend of mine likes to call my music taste sad but rad. So a lot of sad music. I really, there's this one thing that Tom York said, where he said that if people stop listening to sad music, it would really worry him because it would mean that they've stopped being in touch with themselves. So 100% sad music, any kind, send them my way, all the time. Of course, great time to plug in my book. All 19 artists in Songs of Our People. All of them, love all of them. And in terms of movies, I really enjoyed looking at Xavier Dolan's work because we talk of Vankar Wai's camera, and rightly so, but I feel like Xavier Dolan's camera is also beautiful. Beautiful work. I also, of course, really enjoy Vankar Wai. And just to sound a little less like this pseudo artist, I want to say that I really enjoy watching trash. And I have grown to have a really soft corner for trash watch. And at a time when this world is going to shit, I'm just so thankful for the amount of trash content that's out there. And my friend Rohan, who I mentioned earlier in this interview, like, we have this routine where basically there'll be times when we'll order in some food, or one of us will cook, and we'll open a bottle of whiskey and we'll watch some really bad movie, like, oh my god, when we basically know that our brain cells are melting. But yeah, so I'm all for trash content. Of course, I mean, so when I was doing this lecture, I had like a series of books that I consider as essential reading for any photographer, any young artist out there. That's Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, Annihilation of Caste by Dr. Ambedkar, All About Love by Bell Hooks. There was Notes to a Native Son by Baldwin, and there was one more, which for life of me I can't remember right now, but I think that's a good enough start point.
Okay, the bookend of this is what is your favorite part of both the books, and can you read it out for us? Favorite segment? I mean, I don't need you to tell me, I just want you to pick up the book and tell me what is the favorite segment, and if you would like to, why?
So for the first book I already did it, so I'm happy to do it again. And do you want me to tell you why?
Yeah.
I also touched upon it, but also again happy to do it again. So this is the part which says, if I can find it in my own book. Yes. So this is a piece of text which says, "For when my mind plays tricks on me and tells me only about the things I don't have, let the record show that I have known abundance. I know what it feels like to walk under a sky full of trees with birdsong to keep me company. I have known laughter, the kind that makes your stomach hurt and your eyes water. I have known love that makes you want to be a better person. Let the record state that I have lived a full life and yet barely lived at all. And let the record make it amply clear that I am not done yet, not even close." And why I hold this so close to me, this piece of text and the sequence that follows after, is because this is me talking to my suicidal self, telling that person that I'm not going to let you win. I have got more going for me than against me, and this is me talking to that part of my brain saying, shut the fuck up, I have power over you. And just to say that I don't think life was meant to be easy, but life over death, any day, and any day, life is worth fighting for. That's why abundance, for when my mind plays tricks on me. And for Songs of Our People, I'm particularly proud of the introduction, but I will not read anything from the introduction because it just got an entire flow to it, and I'd like to reserve that for later. But I will read the first paragraph of the first profile, only because this is something that I'm really proud of. It's something that I'm very proud that I have written, and I'm very proud to have been able to put this into context in the larger profile. And this is from Katanisa's profile, who's this brilliant Garo artist, and just, my God, like such great clarity of thought and so in touch with the world around him, just beautiful. Like, please look up his music. He's just such a talented person. And so it starts by saying, language is history. In India, like many countries around the world, language bears the mark of our colonial past. Our tongues weighed down by a language we were forced to learn, often burying the one we were born to. In Meghalaya, where until just a couple of centuries ago there was no written word and history was passed down orally from generation to generation, language, whether spoken or sung, is also a link to our ancestors. In language, we find a connection to the world around us, not just to other people, but also to nature. Spoken or otherwise, through language we introspect, through language we love. Language resists, language persists. And I was really proud of this paragraph that I had written, because the rest of the piece goes on to talk about this very thing about language barrier and about how Katani says, figured out a way to rise above a language barrier, and the thing we talk about, music has no language, and how he has figured a pathway for that. So, that.
Thank you so much, Anurag. It's been a wonderful conversation. I had the best time. Thank you so much for letting this be a free flow, and this was way beyond what we thought we would. And I hope all of this makes on to.
You have enough for a season.
Yeah, but I want to put it up as a one, even if it's a 2.5 hour long piece. I want this conversational quality of this chat to come across onto that. So I'm going to try my best to not worry about that and just put the whole thing up.
I want to say this one thing here, Sarthak, and like that's what Songs of Our People opens with, which is the quote by James Baldwin from A Conversation with Nina Simone, where he says, to have a conversation with someone, you have to reveal yourself. So thank you to you two for revealing yourself, which allowed us to have this conversation. It can seem like that's the role of a good interviewer, to be just absent enough, but just always there. So you are really great at this, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing and all the amazing hopes and dreams that you have with this. We definitely need this, and onwards and upwards to you, man.
Thank you so much. Wish you luck for Songs of Our People, and I hope it reaches out to a lot more people than even you imagine. Alright, so we're gonna end this now.